So in this part 3 of the 4-part series of our vertical hydroponic system of us growing, what we're going to be doing is we've got the sides and the pond line all set up. What we're going to be doing is setting up not only the pump but also the plumbing system. Well, it is about that time. We have all 4 tiers of our racking system fully wrapped, ready to go, and now it's time to go ahead and get our plumbing system installed. First thing what you're going to want to do is make certain you have it all worked out in your blueprints of what you wanted to do. Some people will use a small little 5-gallon bucket if they have a smaller system. Some people are going to use storage totes that range anywhere between 15 and 20 gallons. Some people, like me, opted to go ahead and use a 55-gallon barrel. That's nice food grade, fully wrapped, and it's going to be a little bit more elongated, so that way when you go to pump out the system, most of your water will still be under, your pump itself will remain underwater if that's the type of pump you got. Some people, if they even have a little bit larger, are going to opt to have larger systems, whether it be an IBC tote or a large pond system that they just happen to drop their pumps in. For the most part though, I like using the 55-gallon drum. It's nice, it's modular, you can find them everywhere from even your big box store to your local farm and ranch store. I just happened to go pick mine up from my local farm and ranch store because I've got a pretty good relationship with them and they were able to help me out a little bit. Unfortunately, when I went to go build my racking tier system, there was a slight problem. I did not account for the full height of the 55-gallon drum. I was able to and remembered to get the shelf, but I did not account for that side bracket. And so it would, technically speaking, be able to fit into the racking system. But I was not able to fully get the water in, make certain I could stir some of my water-soluble fertilizers, all that in it. So what I went ahead and did is I marked off an area on my 55-gallon drum, and I went ahead and hacked the top off. That way I can more easily gain access to it. Once I've got that, I went ahead and utilized the holes that I've got on the racking tier system, and I went ahead and put bulkheads with adapters so that way I could attach 1-inch PVC pipe. Now I went ahead and chose 1-inch PVC pipe because there is 1/2-inch pipe running off of my pump. And one thing that I've learned over the years that you want to keep in mind when you are doing your pump system, whatever you've got going in, you want your drainage to be the absolute minimum about 1/4 inch larger, or ideally you want it to be twice as large as your pump, because your drainage system, if it's like mine, is going to rely on gravity to drain it, whereas the pump is going to be force flushing it through. So you're most likely going to have a lot more water going up into your system than you will be draining down. So you want to have either a drain system that is going to be as large or larger for it so it can accommodate that drain off, so you don't flood your own system, because that is going to make the missus very, very angry to have a very wet floor. If you are able to have it in a non-carpeted area with hardwood floors, concrete, so if you do have some spills, it will easily be taken care of. Let's keep in mind, even though you plan for this to be watertight, you are dealing with massive amounts of water, and there is always a possibility of that. Now, with the PVC pipe, what we're going to go ahead and be doing is we're going to be running a pipe from our pump that is actually a physical submersible pump that's going to go down. We're going to be attaching 1/2-inch PVC pipe that runs up to the very top of our tier using 90-degree angles. We're going to sift it out. Then we're going to be branching that PVC pipe into 3 systems, so that way it will drain it down, and we're going to spread out the flow between 3 different sections. The reason why we're choosing to do 3 different sections is so that way we can get as much water dispersal as possible when it flows in. Now you can use one entry point when you're doing the water, but that's going to make it a little bit harder as the water flows down to spread out, unless you're having some mechanism that's going to force the water to spread across your entire system. That's why I like having it this way, of multiple entry points in your system, so that way all the plants across your entire thing is going to help that water disposal go further. keep in mind, once you do have plants in it, with all the little cell packs, it's going to make little diversion points throughout the entire system. So the more plants you actually have in your hydroponic system, the better water distribution you will have on your shelving. Now that we've got this installed, what we're going to have happen is it's going to flow up to the very top shelf. It's going to hit the bulkheads that have the drainage system, and to make things as efficient as possible for us, we don't have the entire system interconnected. We're going to be having it hit one section, flow down. Once it gets towards the end of the shelf, we have bulkheads that will allow gravity to feed down below. Now we've chosen to go ahead and have 2 flow points go down for 2 reasons. That's going to significantly increase the amount of drainage that we can have to help prevent our shelves from overflowing, as well as it's going to divert water so that way we have 2 drainage points maintaining our flow as we go down from shelf to shelf. Because even though our top shelf had 3 points, if we only had 1 drainage hole in the bottom of the shelf, that would make it so we only have 1 entry hole on the bottom shelf below it. And so that's why I have opted to have 2 drainage holes, so that way we'll have 2 flow points on the bottom shelf. It's going to flow down, it's going to go through the drainage on that side, and then it's going to flow down again on that 3rd shelf, so that way it can flow back into the barrel below it. Once again, opting to have 2 flow drainage points within that 3rd tier system. Now, having 2 flow points down into the barrel itself won't do anything because there's no other shelf connected to it. It's not going to help to mix it up or keep anything good. It's just going to help that drainage shelf right there, so that way we can maintain excessive draining more than we actually need to help with the flowing system. Now, when you're looking at the pump itself and what type of pump you want to use, we went ahead and chose a pump that was capable of having a head height of 5 meters and a max flow rate of about 5,200 liters. Now, for this particular system we built, this is actually more pump than we need, but the pump for this size and the smaller one was actually about the same size, so we went ahead and got the bigger size pump rather than getting a smaller one because they were the same size. I would rather have a little bit more pump than I need than not enough, because that flow system will greatly reflect in the whole system flow of it. Now, this is also going to help us on another thing. If we decide to go ahead and build the system to make it a little bit bigger, or later on utilize this pump for a bigger system that we choose to build later on while utilizing a smaller pump in the future, then we can also make it better that way. I like to have diversification in all my systems, so that way I can easily transfer between the different systems. Now, when you ask yourself, how much pump do I need to be able to actually get through all of this system going, there are some general rules of thumb that you could use. For me personally though, I like to have a pump that is big enough that is going to be able to circulate my entire water system at least once per hour. Now, it's nice to be able to circulate twice per hour or things like that, and I know this is moving towards the heavier side and you really don't need that much water circulation, but I like to have a little bit more than needed versus less, so that way you can increase the water movement and reduce that stagnation that you're generally going to have. When you go to actually start mixing your system, one of the things that I like to do is, now what I'm doing here is not the smartest thing that I like to do. I'm dumping the material directly into the powder and I'm mixing it with a little stick. To make it a little bit easier for you, what I like to do is actually take either an old milk jug, an old 2-liter bottle, or a separate 5-gallon container, whatever your chosen mixing thing is, and go ahead and take your powder and mix it into a smaller quantity and make it super concentrated. That way, when you go to take that super concentrated material and dump it into your main reservoir tank, it's going to be much easier for that water-soluble hydroponic fertilizer to mix in with the current stuff, so that way you don't have little floaties all over the place. Now, you don't have to use a water-soluble fertilizer. That's just what I personally chosen to do, because I've used fish emulsion or a few other things in the past, and I've just noticed that it gives the food a weird, funky taste when you're using the concentrated fish emulsion. Now, this is going to be different depending on the system that you use, whether you're using aquaponics or another system. But because of my current size of tank that I've got, my restraints, all of that, this is just the method I've used to use as a fertilizer. And in most cases, when you're dealing with a system like this, where you're going to have a smaller hydroponic system, most likely you're going to use a water-soluble fertilizer, whether it be in liquid concentrate or in powder form. Now, you could use aquaponics or a few other ones, but your water tank reservoir is going to have to be a lot bigger, and you want to make steps in order to protect your pump itself in a separate system, so that way when it does activate and go flow, you're not sucking up fish into your pump, because that's not going to be a very fun day for the fish or you when you have to go clean up that mess, because that fish gets stuck right to that pump. Well, after filling up the tank, getting everything plumbed through the holes and getting that all secure, making certain it's watertight, it is now time for the final project. We are now going to be taking our pump and plugging it into our system that we have. Now, keep in mind, you are working with electricity, you are working with pumps, so you are going to have an electrical system nearby to be able to run the pump. I like setting up the pump on timer systems, so that way you're taking out much more of the work and having to plug it in and do that. For right now, though, we're just going to go ahead and do it by hand. And it is time to see if things are going to be watertight. I like to go ahead and do this without any fertilizers in it whatsoever, because if you don't, then you're going to be potentially wasting a lot of fertilizer. So that's what we've opted to go ahead and do, is we've got just straight water, and we are testing it out because, that's what's important. We need to see if it's watertight. Now, once we get that going, we've proven it's watertight, we can go ahead and add our liquid concentrate fertilizer, we can add plants, and get going. Thanks for joining us, as we've proven now that we've got a functioning, working system. Go ahead and check us out for part 4 when we go ahead and take a look at getting all the lighting set up and getting everything complete. When you are working through some of these systems, though, having all the water flowing and getting things really exciting, it gets you going thinking, you know what, I am almost there. I almost have this hydroponic system set up and ready to go. So, just to help keep you guys focused and have your vision in mind of where this is going, here's a setup of what I've got of some of the plants that I've got in it once the system is fully complete. But keep these visions in your mind of what this system is going to look like once everything is installed, because that's what our final goal is. We want to have plants in here growing, so that way we can have a delicious crop to eat of lettuces or flowers, whatever your chosen thing is. Thanks for joining us on this part 3 of our 4-part series of how to go ahead and build a vertical hydroponics or ebb and flow system in a small apartment or a second bedroom small room series. If you like what you're seeing, go ahead and click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to ring that bell for continued updates on weekly videos that we have coming out, not only on gardening, hydroponics, and just how to grow in general. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.